For decades, Canadians were told a simple story. Our future depended on the United States. Our military, dependent. Our economy, dependent. Our diplomacy, dependent. Even the direction of our industries felt chained to decisions made in Washington, not Ottawa. And every time an American president wanted to flex their power, Canada was expected to nod, obey, and quietly absorb the consequences. But tonight, that story is falling apart. A new chapter is unfolding, and it is happening faster than anyone predicted. Two massive developments, one from Sweden, one from China, have flipped North America's balance of power upside down. Sweden is offering Canada something the US never would: full joint manufacturing rights for next-generation fighter jets. At the same time, China is opening the door to a trade reset so dramatic that it could rewrite our entire automotive future. Both moves happened under Mark Carney's leadership. Both moves directly undermine Donald Trump's plans. And both moves reveal a shocking truth. Canada is no longer sitting quietly in America's shadow. Something fundamental has shifted. This isn't just policy. This is sovereignty. This is strategy. Welcome to Northern Pulse, and welcome to the moment Canada begins rewriting the rules. Something unprecedented is unfolding across Canada's political landscape. For the first time in decades, Canada is openly stepping out from under Washington's shadow. Not gradually, not cautiously, but decisively. The old expectation that Canada would simply follow U.S. interests like a loyal junior partner is visibly breaking down. Under Carney's leadership, the message is clear. Canada is done asking permission. This shift didn't happen because of one event. It happened because years of pressure from Trump, years of tariffs, threats, insults, and economic bullying slowly built a national consensus. Canadians don't want dependency. They want sovereignty, stability, and global respect. And now, two developments have come together at the exact same time, forming the clearest sign yet that Canada is changing course. First, Sweden wants to build fighter jets in Canada, not sell them. Build them here, with Canadian workers, Canadian factories, and Canadian materials. That alone shakes the foundation of decades of US-dominated defense policy. But the second development is even bigger. China, after 8 years of cold, frozen relations, is reopening the door to Canada, signaling that its tariffs may disappear, its tourists may return, and its EV industry may directly enter our market. A military revolution, an economic earthquake. And together, they mark the beginning of Canada's most sovereign era since the 1950s. But this was only the start. When Saab stepped forward with its Gripen proposal, it wasn't just another military pitch. It was a geopolitical shockwave. For decades, the U.S. held a monopoly on Canadian defense choices. Need jets? Buy American. Need upgrades? Buy American. Want support? Ask Washington for approval. But Sweden didn't follow those rules. They tore them up. Saab's proposal is unlike anything Canada has been offered before. Instead of simply selling fighter jets, Sweden offered full industrial partnership, actual co-manufacturing on Canadian soil. That means Canadian companies would build components. Canadian engineers would handle research. Canadian workers would assemble jets. And the expertise, once learned, would stay in Canada forever. Up to 10,000 high-skilled jobs, a new aerospace hub, a fully sovereign supply chain. And here's the part that rattles Washington the most. Gripens are specifically designed to operate without U.S. approval. Unlike F-35s, which are deeply tied to American software and maintenance networks, Gripens give Canada independence in both combat and production. For Trump, this isn't just a lost sale. It's a humiliation, a symbolic rejection of the dependency he pushed aggressively during his tariff escalation. Canada sending a message: we don't need your jets to defend ourselves. But how did we reach this level of confidence? The answer leads us directly to Carney's larger strategy. While most world leaders react to U.S. pressure, Carney has treated it like ammunition. fuel for transformation instead of fear. His entire strategy rests on one principle: diversify everything: defense, trade, diplomacy, manufacturing. Canada's economic roots had grown too deeply into American soil for decades, leaving the country exposed whenever Washington acted out. Trump's tariff blitz only made that vulnerability undeniable. Steel, aluminum, lumber, dairy. Every time Trump wanted attention, he slapped Canada with a penalty. Carney's response? Stop relying on the U.S. altogether. Choosing Gripen over F-35s fits perfectly into this plan. It breaks a 70-year tradition of American military dominance. It shows the world Canada can align with Europe without fear. And it creates a new aerospace identity built on partnership, not dependency. Some analysts quietly suggest Trump's inner circle is alarmed. Rumors claim several Republican strategists privately warned Trump that losing control of Canada's defense choices would weaken America's entire Arctic strategy. That speculation remains unconfirmed, but it reflects a growing reality. Washington is losing its grip, and they know it. But while Sweden represents military independence, the next development hits America where it really hurts: their economy. Because China suddenly wants Canada back. For 8 long years, Canada-China relations were frozen solid. The Meng-Wanzhou saga, the detention of the two Michaels, tit-for-tat trade punishments, blocked canola shipments, and a collapse in tourism created one of the worst diplomatic deadlocks in modern history. For years, no progress was made, no meetings, no negotiations, no thaw. And then Carney walked into the APEC summit. A quiet 40-minute meeting with Xi Jinping changed everything. For the first time since 2016, China placed Canada back on its approved list for outbound tourism. A major diplomatic signal that China is ready to reopen channels. Tourism is just the beginning. Phone calls resumed. Ministerial meetings restarted. Trade dialogues reopened after years of silence. And then came the biggest hint of all. China publicly suggested that it might lift its punitive canola tariffs, the very tariffs that symbolized the diplomatic freeze. This wasn't random generosity. It was strategic timing. And analysts immediately noticed the pattern. China was reopening to Canada just as Trump was intensifying his pressure campaign. Carney didn't need to attack Trump. He used diplomacy instead. And suddenly, China was the one shifting, not Canada. But the real story was hidden in what China wanted next. On the surface, the potential removal of canola tariffs looks like a simple economic reset. But behind the scenes, it represents something far bigger. Canola is one of the most valuable Canadian exports to China. When Beijing froze those imports, it was a deliberate pressure tactic. Undoing that freeze now signals something deeper. China wants a new trade arrangement. And like all global powers, China does nothing without expecting something in return. Rumors began circulating immediately within trade circles that China was preparing a reciprocity request. The most likely candidate? Access to the Canadian automotive market, specifically for electric vehicles. Chinese EVs are dominating Europe, Australia, Southeast Asia, and parts of Latin America. But they've been locked out of the US and partially blocked in Canada due to tariffs. If the canola tariff is lifted, China expects the EV barrier to soften. And that's where the story becomes explosive. Because the entry of Chinese EVs doesn't just shift consumer options. It detonates a political earthquake across North America. Trump fears one thing above all: losing the Canadian auto market. Carney, intentionally or not, might have just cracked it wide open. But you haven't heard the biggest part yet. This is where everything changes. Chinese EVs aren't just another product. They're cheaper. They're more advanced. They're built at scale the US can't match. They have battery innovations American manufacturers are still trying to copy. In Europe, they're already breaking records. In Australia, they're dominating the market. If they enter Canada, even partially, the entire industry shifts overnight. Here's what happens the moment those cars arrive. 1. Prices collapse. 2. EV adoption accelerates. 3. U.S. automakers lose their safe market. 4. Trump's leverage evaporates. American automakers have relied on Canadian loyalty for decades. Chargers, Rams, F-150s, Tahoes. Canada has been their second home, their fallback market, their predictable buyer base. But if China enters with EVs priced 30 to 50% lower, that loyalty disappears instantly. And here's the twist. Many experts believe Trump knows this. His aggressive 100% tariffs against China weren't just about protecting the U.S. They were about preventing Chinese cars from sneaking in through Canada. If Canada opens the door, those cars could reach America anyway, indirectly, through cross-border imports or resale. Carney didn't have to confront Trump openly. He simply had to create alternatives. Swedish jets, Chinese EVs, European deals, ASEAN diversification. And now, Canada is doing what Washington feared most. When you zoom out, the pattern becomes unmistakable. Canada is building a new global identity, one not centered on America, but on a network of partners spanning continents. From Sweden, Canada gains defense independence. From China, potential EV access and restored trade. From Europe, investment and diplomatic stability. From ASEAN nations, fast-growing trade opportunities. From India, technologies and partnerships. From Japan and South Korea, advanced automotive collaboration. Canada is quietly becoming a global middle power, respected, needed, and connected. Meanwhile, U.S.-Canada relations continue to fracture under Trump. Polls show more Canadians now view the U.S. as a threat than China, a dramatic psychological shift. Trump's unpredictability has pushed Canadians toward global diversification out of necessity, not ideology. Analysts warn, however, that China's renewed interest could come with political expectations. Some worry Beijing may use the thaw to pursue influence on sensitive issues. These warnings remain speculation, but they highlight the delicate balance Canada must navigate. Still, the shift is undeniable. Canada is done being cornered. We're aligning with the world, not just the neighbor next door. And that brings us to the final turning point. Tonight's developments aren't isolated events. They're a roadmap. And that roadmap leads to a Canada more powerful and independent than it has been in generations. Sweden's Gripen jets show we no longer need American hardware to defend ourselves. China lifting restrictions proves Carney's diplomacy works where Trump's bullying fails. Future EV access guarantees Canada an automotive revolution independent of Detroit. Stronger European ties mean Canada now negotiates globally, not regionally. Diversification replaces dependency. Strategy replaces fear. Trump wanted Canada trapped. Instead, he pushed Canada into transformation. Carney didn't fight Trump with anger or insults. He fought with alternatives, better deals, broader alliances, smarter planning, and calm diplomacy that opened doors others believed were permanently closed. The U.S. tried to isolate Canada, and in the process, Canada isolated the U.S. from its most stable, loyal ally. Canada is no longer reacting. Canada is leading. This is Northern Pulse, where sovereignty speaks louder than threats. And this new era, it has only just begun.